Yo, what's going on, guys? Sam here. Hope you're doing well. This is really crazy. Apple has already released another iOS 13 update. This is not a beta for developers or public testers. This is out for you guys right now. It's iOS 13.1.2 and it solves even more issues than iOS 13.1.1 before it. Now, this update is also out on the iPad as well. It's iPadOS 13.1.2, but what's really interesting, guys, is the fact that the changelogs are actually different between platforms. So I want to show you guys everything that's new per usual. If you're excited, looking forward to this video, drop a like down below. It does seriously help me out. And hit subscribe so you stay up to date on the latest iOS news. Let's go ahead and get started. So this time I want to start over on the iPad just because the changelog is a bit shorter. Essentially, if you were restoring from an iCloud backup and the progress bar was still showing even though the backup had completed, Apple's corrected that issue and also fixed in iPadOS 13.1.2. Running shortcuts on HomePod should be possible again. I feel like there's been a ton of HomePod issues and this is just another fix for one of those. So Apple's been talking about iPadOS and iOS being separate updates for a while, that they are two distinct platforms now. And today's updates prove that Apple will be willing to change things on the iPad specifically rather than push out general updates for all devices. So jumping into what's new on the iPhone, Apple fixed that same bug here. Again, if you're restoring from an iCloud backup, it might be complete, but the progress bar might not show full completion. Apple says that should be corrected in iOS 13.1.2. This one's pretty broad, but Apple just says sometimes the camera wouldn't work. So if you're having issues with the camera not working, Apple says that should be fixed again. So I haven't had any issues. Let me know down below in the comment section if you guys just for some reason couldn't get your camera app to work, but that was one I haven't really heard about before, so glad to see Apple has corrected that anyway, but I don't know how the camera just stops working. Like, come on, Apple, that's pretty ridiculous. Probably one of the most underrated features on the iPhone, the flashlight toggle. Apple says it might not have been working in 13.1.1. It's actually really cool on the new iPhones how it sort of illuminates the edges of the camera square right here. Like, I kind of roasted Apple for the camera square for a while, but it's pretty sweet looking. So if you want to see that sweet effect, you guys can do that reliably now. And the flashlight toggle should be working every time instead of just some of the time. After updating to iOS 13.1.1, I saw some of you guys say that your displays looked a bit different. Maybe like the color calibration was off. Turns out you were right. That wasn't just a hunch. That was actually happening. There was a bug where your display calibration data would have been wiped out or not saved. So Apple's also fixed that in 13.1.2. So colors should be back to normal and your display should look right. I think it's also hard to show off in post, like display changes, because I do color correct my video to look nice in the first place. But just know if you were having display data calibration issues, Apple says it right there, that's been fixed. This one is a rollover feature from the iPadOS 13.1.2 changelog, but again, for talking to your HomePod about shortcuts, issues there should finally be extinguished, and I hope that this is the last of the HomePod issues that Apple has had to fix, because there's been a lot of incompatibility. And finally, in iOS 13 before this update, Bluetooth would be disconnecting on some vehicles, and this is actually something that I experienced directly. I can't say that about a lot of issues, but I did notice that I'd have to wait a second or disconnect, reconnect Bluetooth like that to unlock my car. So Apple's corrected that, which is super nice. I mean, if there's one thing to say about this update, guys, it's that Apple is fixing bugs at an unprecedented rate. I cannot emphasize that enough. We are, what, 4 updates into iOS 13 already, and it came out less than 3 weeks ago? Apple's never done that before. That's a really good sign, and it shows that they actually are fixing these bugs rather than waiting forever to roll out major updates as they have historically. It's not going to be another iOS 11 where issues persist for months and we just haven't heard from Apple. That's not the strategy that they're going with this year. They've never really done this before, where they've just released updates immediately to fix issues. We've always waited forever to see changes and features and updates addressed, and Apple's not doing that this year. So I feel like internally there have been some big changes. Apple previewed that things were rearranged after like the iOS 11 disaster, and I think this year, 2 years into that, we're finally seeing the ramifications of some seriously good Apple software changes. So that's all I've got for you in this video. That is iOS and iPadOS 13.1.2. If you guys enjoyed it, if you learned something new, drop a like down below. That does seriously help me out. And of course, hit subscribe so you stay up to date on the latest Apple news. I've been Sam. Hope you guys are doing well. And I'll talk to all of you in my next video.